In 1979, Asia witnessed a brutal yet strangely forgotten conflict, the short, savage, and politically explosive war between China and Vietnam, a clash that reshaped regional power for decades but was almost erased from global memory. And today we dive into this lost battlefield where 29 days of fighting revealed the deep scars of history, ideology, and ambition. The story begins in the turbulent aftermath of the Vietnam War. Vietnam had just defeated the United States in 1975, becoming a hero of communist resistance, but victory brought a storm of new tensions, especially with its giant northern neighbor, China. Although both nations were communist, they followed different ideological paths. Vietnam aligned more closely with the Soviet Union, while China and the Soviet Union were locked in a fierce Cold War rivalry. This ideological divide exploded in 1978 when Vietnam invaded Cambodia to topple the Khmer Rouge, a ruthless regime backed by China. Beijing saw Vietnam's intervention as a direct challenge, a Soviet-backed step into China's backyard. Diplomacy collapsed, border tensions rose, and by early 1979 the stage was set for a showdown that no one wanted to talk about but everyone feared. On February 17, 1979, China launched a massive offensive, over 200,000 troops backed by tanks, rocket artillery, and aircraft surged across the northern border into the Vietnamese provinces of Lang Son, Chao Bang, and Lao Cai. Chinese commanders expected a quick victory, imagining Vietnam exhausted from decades of war, but what awaited them was a nation more battle-hardened than any other on earth. Villagers, local militias, and elite Vietnamese troops turned every mountain pass into a kill zone and every abandoned house into an ambush point. Chinese armor rolled into narrow towns only to be attacked by small, agile anti-tank teams who used the same tactics they once deployed against the Americans. The Chinese army, which had not fought a major war since Korea in the 1950s, struggled with outdated command systems, poor logistics, and inexperienced soldiers. Vietnamese units, though fewer in number, fought with unmatched ferocity, defending their homeland inch by inch while reinforcements remained tied down in Cambodia. This imbalance created chaotic, close-range battles where bayonet charges, mortar duels, and street-by-street fighting became the norm. In Lang Son, one of the war's bloodiest battles, Chinese divisions pushed forward aggressively, capturing the city but suffering devastating casualties in the process. Vietnamese snipers hid in shattered buildings, militia units cut supply lines, and booby traps crippled Chinese advances. Meanwhile, the Vietnamese strategy was simple yet brilliant: avoid massive losses, slow China down, bleed their forces, and make the cost of invasion so high that political pressure would force Beijing to retreat. And that is exactly what happened. After 29 days of relentless combat, China announced that it had taught Vietnam a lesson and began withdrawing its troops. But Vietnam claimed victory as well, arguing that China failed to break its control over Cambodia or force any major concessions. The truth lies somewhere in between. China did succeed in causing large-scale destruction in the border regions and exposed serious weaknesses in the Vietnamese defense infrastructure, while Vietnam exposed the poor combat readiness of the Chinese military and demonstrated its incredible resilience yet again. Casualty numbers remain disputed. China claims around 20,000 soldiers were killed or wounded, while Western analysts estimate up to 50,000 Chinese casualties. Vietnam officially reported around 10,000 casualties, but many believe the true number was far higher. Even today, both nations avoid discussing the war publicly. China rarely mentions it in historical documents, and Vietnam quietly honors the fallen without drawing international attention. Maps from that era disappeared, graves went unmarked, and both sides buried the war under layers of political silence. Yet the impact of this forgotten conflict continues. China modernized its entire military because the 1979 war exposed massive weaknesses, while Vietnam strengthened its alliances with the Soviet Union and later pivoted towards the global economy to survive. Border skirmishes continued well into the 1980s, and the relationship between the two nations remained tense for decades. This war mattered not because of territory gained or lost, but because it revealed how fragile alliances can be, how ideology shapes conflict, and how even communist brothers can become bitter enemies when national pride is challenged. It also stands as a reminder that the smallest wars, the wars nobody talks about, often change nations the most. As we uncover these hidden battles, forgotten soldiers, and stories the world ignored, remember that history is not written by the loudest voices but by the dust and bones left on silent borders. For more deep military history, global war stories, and forgotten conflicts explained in a cinematic way, subscribe to the channel for more.